and give brief presentations. Then we'll have the short video interruption, and then we'll have our panel discussion. So, Nato Thompson. Nato, raise your hand, please. Hi. Hey, Nato. We've just met, although I've heard so much about him all my life. I feel like I know him. During his tenure as curator at Mass MoCA, Nato produced numerous exhibitions, including most notably, and very relevant to this panel, Interventionists, Art in the Social Sphere from 2004. In March 2007, Nato became curator and producer for Creative Time in New York City, one of New York's really most wonderful art organizations. He writes for many publications and is currently working on a book, Seeing Power, Art and Activism in the Age of Cultural Production. His writings have appeared in Art Journal, Tema Celeste, Parquet, Cabinet, and the Journal of Aesthetics and Protest, which you have, if you haven't seen the Journal of Aesthetics and Protest, go out and get a copy. It's really a great publication out of LA. He holds a BA in Political Theory from the University of California at Berkeley and an MA in Arts Administration from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Josh Greene, hey Josh, has exhibited at the Centre Pompidou in 2003, the Irish Museum of Modern Art in 2004, and the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in 2007, among other places. His recent projects include Service Works, a small foundation he created that awards grants to other artists, and Bay Area Leisure Arts, another grant-making organization for people living and working in the Bay Area. These grants, I'm not sure if it was for both organizations or for just one, was the money that you made in tips working as a waiter? Just one, the leisure grants or the other? The Service Works. And he's also currently serving as an unlicensed therapist in the Amateurs exhibition at the CCA Wattis Institute. So if you have problems, it's actually too late because you're going away. You're screwed, so sorry about that. Okay. And he's also a wonderful and valued member of CCA's graduate fine arts faculty. Dr. Shannon Jackson is currently professor in rhetoric and theater, dance, and performance studies at UC Berkeley. Her publications include Lines of Activity from 2000 and Professing Performance from 2004, plus numerous essays and edited collections and journals. Her current work in progress is Social Works, the Infrastructural Politics of Performance. She is most recently principal investigator for a community oral history and arts installation in Richmond and Berkeley, and she was awarded in 2007 Author of the Year from the Comparative Drama Association, and in 2005, Best Book Award from the National Communications Association. Tina Takemoto is a writer and performance artist. Under the name Her, She Senses, she has collaborated with Angela Ellsworth since 1992. She also performs with Annie Sprinkle and Elizabeth Stevens. Her articles have appeared in numerous publications in the anthology Thinking Through the Skin from 2001. She's currently working on a book tentatively titled, is it still tentative? It's still tentative. Lovesick, Illness, Collaboration, and Grief in Performance. She is an associate professor at the California College of the Arts, where her teaching interests include contemporary art, visual culture, performance art, gender and queer theory, Asian American studies, post-colonial theory, and theories of illness, trauma, and grief. Wouldn't you like to be in one of her classes? So thank you. So we're going to go in that order, starting with Nato Thompson.
Interrupt me! Every chance you get. I want this to be a stumbling, clumsy 15 minutes. Just as a note, okay, so I did this show in 2004 called The Interventionists, and it was a look at interventionist art, but I have to add a qualifier right away, and that is to say, that name kind of came about by accident. Originally, I called the show Tactical Engagement, but my staff thought it was a show about tactile art. So we had to change it. But that is to say that I don't particularly feel a strong affinity to interventionist art as some sort of credo or ethos. I just know it's out there. Its efficacy is quite debatable. But I am deeply dedicated to political change in this country and world. And at times, culture is useful in doing that. At times, it's a joke. So I decided this lecture, the way I'm laying it out, is basically, since 2004, I've kind of been on, I deal with a lot of political art stuff, and I hear a lot of debate all the time. So I thought I would synthesize my quippish responses to people's problems with political art as a way of framing things as not a joke, versus what the joke really is. This is my way of approaching it. And basically the joke of all of this is that neoliberalism, as we all know, is a political structure and economic structure that shapes the world, and culture are one thing. And the way in which cultural production, as the way the world is made now, has confused us as artistic cultural producers. Because what we really are just capital-generating machines. And in fact, we do it so intuitively, we are always confused by our own motivations. Okay, I will start with a quip I heard from Steve Kurtz of Critical Art Ensemble, who said, "I will call it art if that is what the grant application asks for." And I will go into why a little later, but the thing I like about that a lot is, A, as a curator who always has to define why something is art, I feel this way. I'm more interested in interesting things that happen in the world. My affinity to the term art is loose at best. But it also implies an economic structure and a strategy for deploying what you do as a creator. That is to say, maybe the discourse of art is a safe space where we can get stuff done. Maybe it's not. Maybe other fields are better. So it's a strategic way in which we position ourselves within various fields of power. Let's start with graffiti. Graffiti operates on the aesthetics of illegality. It offers an opportunity to aggressively engage with larger social forces. I think about the way we can demonstrate the idea of a cultural production as think about the sanctioned graffiti wall, where graffiti artists can actually produce graffiti on a wall that's okay to do stuff on, right? Do we really want to call that graffiti? Really? Really? It looks like graffiti. But isn't the point to actually do something illegal? Isn't the illegality the aesthetic, right? Isn't it what we realize it's not visuality anymore, it's the way in which things operate within fields of power? That in fact, that's what the interest is? And isn't that the kind of crux of the question about interventionist art in museums? But here's the flip side under neoliberalism. The untenable position that graffiti is an outsider, unmarketable arena. Me and my fellow curator Creative Time joked that we want to do a show that no one could support because of its inherent radical content. A graffiti show! Do you think that's funny? I always joke that, like, hey, if you want to do something that makes a lot of money, make a graffiti book. You know, Urban Outfitters clearly loves graffiti. Not a joke. Institutions are spaces subject to the power of the ruling class. Institutional critique was valuable in making the relationship between power and cultural space evident. Right. Hans Haacke, institutional critique. It is clear that the white cube is subject to the powers of its board, the kind of interests of the ruling class. When Chris Gilbert left the Berkeley Museum a while ago, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, he was clearly frustrated with the fact that power operates in that space. And this is a valuable thing to know. Space is produced in power. The joke, institutional critique by individuals who act like institutions. I can't go into it too far, maybe you have some questions, but I worked with an artist in Massimo called Christoph Buchel, who was an artist who actually studied under Hans Haacke, and in fact is represented by a gallery called Hauser and Wirth, who have more money than God. And Mass MoCA has no endowment and was a struggling nonprofit institution in town of 12,000. And they were the institution, and the artist, who I know is an institution, was just shocked at this kind of basically imbalance of power. The artist had way more power than the institution. And the art press loved to defend these glorified artists. So I always want to talk about the legacy of institutional critique as a co-opted, bizarre legacy. Not a joke. Interventions produce meaning via their relationship as trespassers in the field of power. Right? That's just like graffiti. That's what interventions do. The joke, producing meaning by trespassing on the field of power, can simultaneously operate in cahoots with power. Just because you critique forms of power doesn't mean you can actually do it at the same time as being within power. You can make money by critiquing money. Not a joke. Highlighting interventionist work in a large institutional structure brings this practice in closer proximity to power and damages its resistant position through inevitable compromise. This is what Larry was talking about in terms of both in academic fields, when you give a term like interventionist, it becomes a field, or in an exhibition